here's just a random sampling. The number of things that you can do with development in Salesforce is limited only by your imagination, and maybe not even that much. So a number of things that we can do. Very often we'll get a request. If something happens in the database, we want to make something else happen. And more often than not, especially for custom development, we do that with triggers. And some examples of that are things like automatic creation of renewal ops, which certainly can be done with CPQ, but it can also be done without CPQ, it can be done with custom development. Well, often we'll get asked to do things like automatic lead conversion. A lead comes in, maybe it's imported from a list, maybe it comes in from a marketing automation system. If we're able to match it somehow with an existing contact or even an existing account, automatically convert it. Things like persona assignment, which becomes especially important if you want to implement something like demand unit waterfall, the ability to automatically assign personas to contacts. So something happens to a contact, its title changes, we automatically assign a persona to it. So if something happens, make something else happen is very often triggers. Oftentimes there are other kinds of calculations that we want to perform, things that can't necessarily be done with rollups. So calculation of ARR and other kinds of SaaS metrics, for example. Other kinds of processing is very often we'll run into as time marches on processing. So many days after an opportunity closes, we want to send an email out to selected contacts related to the opportunity. While it's possible to do that with time-based workflow, I shudder every time I think about time-based workflow, and a schedulable job, it can be an excellent way to do that using custom dev. Often we'll have requests to process large amounts of data, larger amounts of data that can typically be done in the context of a single trigger. And Salesforce has an ability to do that called batch Apex. So very often we write batch Apex jobs that process large amounts of data. Often we'll have those scheduled to run overnight. Other kinds of development use cases, certainly custom user interfaces. And Salesforce has, and I suspect we'll get to it later on today, a lot of different user interface technologies that we can use to build custom UIs. And certainly, and I'll stop talking in just a sec, there's integrations. There's integrations that we can do through third-party tools like Adele Boomi or even a Zapier. But then there's also integrations that we can build directly using code from within Salesforce to either pull data in from an external source or to push data out to an external source. So lots of different things that we can do with development.